Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the book club. I'm Zara, your host, and today we are joined by author Clare Ashton. Hello, Claire.
Hi.
You've just published your latest book. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Ooh, right, I'm going to hold it up because I love the cover of this one. So I've shared it as often as I can. My wife does the covers, and I think this one's her best one yet. It's a mystery this time. I've done my last few books have all been romances, some maybe darker and lighter and a rom-com, but this one is a full-on mystery this time, although there is a love story underpinning it, actually more than one. Set in mid-Wales again. I wrote it last year when I couldn't go to Wales, you couldn't get across the border, and I was missing horribly because I grew up in mid-Wales. My parents are still there, so this is how I spent my time revisiting it because I was missing it so much.
So each book is a labor of love, right? It takes ages to write. So with the Telltale, what are you most proud of?
I think it's the one that I think stretched me most, maybe. It's got a lot of threads in it. There are several different characters. There's a lot going on in this village with a lot of secrets, and this Telltale, giving these people secret notes, revealing that someone knows what they've been up to, and at the same time there's a love story from the past. And I think at the beginning of the novel, there's a lot up in the air, and keeping all those threads running through it was I had to plan this one quite carefully. I mean, and I'm a plotter anyway, but this one was the post-its everywhere, trying to get the story right and the right balance. So there's 4 point of views, probably the most I've had, quite varied as well. Like there's a lady, Sophie Melling from the Manor, who is upper class, and then there's Beth, middle class. And then there's an older woman, Rianne, whose son ran away, and then there's his brother, Geraint, who is kind of a bit of a thug. So these were really quite varied point of views, and to keep all those characters very vividly in my head, and all those threads, and progress the themes through the novel, and give a sense of setting was quite a tall order. So I think I've pulled it off. With a Saturday, most of it is all that going on, but also it has to read, most immediately as a really good page-turning mystery, about who done it and who is it. And so I think I did it okay in the end. But yeah, that it took. Yeah, that really pushed my range of writing and characters and plotting more than any of the other books, I think. So I'm quite proud that it's not bad. It works okay.
I think it's great. So why did you choose to write a mystery?
I kind of started more in mysteries, kind of sort of romantic intrigue, I suppose. That's possibly, and then I moved into lighter books. So it's kind of going back to that in a sense. But I think all my books are quite a mix of... I like to mix all those elements in. I always like having that element of mystery in a book, even if it's a fairly straightforward romance. I always like there to be a little bit of a puzzle to get to know the characters and what might have happened in the past, and always a little bit of a surprise. So there's always that element I like to have in it. But in the same way that, this is a mystery, definitely mystery genre, but I still like to have the love story in it. And I still like to have, the touch of lightheartedness in it as well, as a bit of a touch of comic relief as well. I like that about the books I like most of all, have all those elements. It just, the proportions might differ.
You were brought up in Wales, and this book is set in Wales as well. Did you do any kind of extra research for the book?
Not in terms of... I've forgotten a lot of my Welsh. I had to check the spellings of the snippets of Welsh in there that are sort of sprinkled through. Because my folks were both English and moved there, so English was spoken. So Welsh is definitely a second language that I learned at school. But it was compulsory at my school up until 16. But I've forgotten an awful lot. It's just because if you don't use it every day, it goes. So I had to look up the spellings again, but the sort of sprinkling of Welsh in is all the stuff that I remember all the first language Welsh speakers would use. Like, even if they're talking English to someone, the bits of Welsh would always be in there. So I always use the bits that I can remember. So no research from scratch, I suppose, but constant fact checking and spelling checking more than anything.
What kind of feedback do you get from non-UK readers if they're not familiar with the language or the setting?
I think, yes, some people would like a pronunciation guide. I sent a few links out to readers where you can enter a key in a word and it'll pronounce it for you, because that's quite a challenge. Other things, a lot of maybe US readers really aren't familiar with Wales as being that distinct from the rest of the UK, for example. So it sparks quite an interest in general, which is really nice. That's generally just quite a lot of interest, and people start looking around at holidays to Wales and things, which is really good.
Coming back to the book, was there a particular reason why you chose to have it in the 70s?
Yeah, I suppose last year during the pandemic, I was aiming to write another contemporary romance, actually, that like my last 4 books, but I was having a lot of trouble. I mean, the world was so very fluid and not particularly nice in so many ways. I found it very hard to think, yes, light romance, happy ever after. My head was not in that space at all, and it was just so changeable that it was very difficult to hold on to a general theme, because everything was moving around it. So that encouraged me to just move to the past, something that wouldn't change so much while I was writing it. And also, ever since writing Poppy Jenkins, which is a romance set in a very similar area. Well, actually, before that, I was hoping to write another mystery before Poppy Jenkins about a character returning home, but I just wasn't in the mood for it, because I wanted to think of nice things about home. But when I thought of this idea of going to setting something in the past, I thought, actually, maybe I could do a mystery back home, but set in the past, which is nicely removed. So I don't spoil home, which is nice and like Poppy Jenkins. I can take it to a darker place in the past. So that all kind of came together to make this book.
So the tone of the book is slightly darker. It's reminded me more of After Mrs. Hamilton and Penance than it did of Poppy Jenkins.
Absolutely, yeah. It's in that thread of books, definitely.
Is it harder to write a book with a slightly darker tone?
It really depends on my mood. It really does. Like I said, I kind of like mixing the dark and the light. It just tends to be different proportions. So like in Poppy, it's very light. She is the sunshine girl next door. But at the same time, there's a good dollop of angst in there as well. And not all's well in, the village of Wells in that book. In the same way with The Telltale, there are moments with a best friend, Meg, which lightens, which is a bit of light relief in there as well. So I find that if it's all getting a bit too much, I'll throw in a comedy scene, if not for the reader, for me, to kind of carry on. So I really don't mind either. I like writing, the darker stuff or the lighter stuff, the romances, the mysteries. Romance and mysteries are both my kind of favourite genres to read and write. So, and I'm fairly happy to, flip between the two. And actually reading, I'll always have one of each on the go. So I'm quite happy, skipping between the two.
Because it's set in the 70s, you get elements of like misogyny and homophobia, victim blaming. It sort of struck me that actually things haven't changed all that much in the last 50 years or so.
It was tricky, actually, because I was wondering about getting the balance of it right. Because I mean, it's looking back at the 70s, where every so often I do think, goodness me, it really was a horribly misogynistic, sexist kind of time. So I didn't know if I was laying it on a bit thick, but at the same time, like I say, there are echoes of those attitudes still today. So I thought I should make it just as blatant as it was back then, and you will still find those attitudes anyway.
Yeah. So of the 4 POVs that you wrote, was it difficult to write 4 POVs? And of the 4, which one was the hardest to write?
I think because they were such distinct characters, I didn't find it troublesome switching between them. And actually, it was quite a nice, refreshing break to switch between them, writing and to progress a little bit more of a plot or come at it at a different angle. I just really enjoyed it. Beth, I think, is the most serious, and she has the bulk of kind of story progression, with the others coming in with kind of different angles, perhaps. So I suppose the work of it was done by Beth's point of view, and the other bits coming in tend to be a nice relief and a different point of view, and were very entertaining to write. So I didn't find a difficulty with it. I enjoyed it very much. It's I hope it reads in an entertaining way. I know a lot of people don't like quite that many point of views, perhaps maybe a maximum of two, if they're coming from a romance readership. But I really enjoyed that aspect of it this time.
So I wanted to talk about queer representation in the book. You've got, apart from the Sapphic cast, you've got trans characters, you've also got someone who's gay. And Beth, in particular, she realizes that she prefers romantic love over sex. So, why did you give Beth that particular story arc, especially since it has such big implications on what happens later on in the story?
A big sort of theme of the novel is how narrow sort of gender stereotypes were at the time, and also very narrow views on people's sexuality and what was acceptable at the time. And so it was wanting to show that in the past, because you don't get it represented in the past very much. It's been hidden for forever in our culture. So and also it's common for people to complain about all these new letters and all these new identities, and of course I wanted to show that the people behind all those have always existed. So that was something I very much wanted to do with the story right from the outset. Lady Melling and Daniel, I had sort of an idea of them to start with, but some of the other characters evolved as I was plotting, and with Beth Ann in particular, when the novel starts, she's just divorced from her husband and come back to the village with her daughter, but we know that she had a very strong affinity for her best friend, but it's not apparent straight away what that was. And when I was developing the story, I kept coming to a stumbling block that it didn't feel completely right, that it has that very common and understandable narrative where a woman has male relationships, but then she meets a woman and it all makes sense. It all comes out in colour, and it's a very relatable experience, but it didn't fit with where I was going with the story or with that character for some reason. It felt too easy an explanation, and it was quite a complex setup. She only told one person, which is Ellen, her best friend, who she is very much in love with, that actually she doesn't like sex. And it's not that it was just these rather mundane to awful experiences with men in the past. It's just she doesn't like sex anyway. That's not a factor in how she looks at people so much. As that's a natural inclination, and also reinforced with kind of the sexual experience she's had and the pressure to have it with her husband. So it just made more sense for that character. And then suddenly the plot also made sense in lots of other ways. The other way characters, their relationship and why they might not have known about each other. And also the ending. Yeah. Once I got over that block of actually it's not that she doesn't like sex with men and yay women, it's actually she's not a particularly sexual person, that is not the priority for her, but she's very much in love with her best friend Ellen and always has been, and it is a romantic love, and also I think it makes sense that when everybody knows and has come to terms with who everyone is, I think it's nicely wrapped up. Some readers haven't liked it. It hasn't been full satisfying for them, but it's very much for me.
I love that initially, when you see the women and they don't seem to have a lot of freedom right at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then eventually as the book progresses, things turn for them, and then they're sort of like able to live the life that they want.
Yeah, they find each other and realize who they are, and by supporting each other, sort of strengthen each other. I think that's very much part of the book, that finding your community and your found family in there, so that they're very much stronger because of it.
You love developing your secondary characters. Do you have a favorite secondary character in the book?
Yeah, a couple. I like secondary characters because you don't have to play it quite so safe with secondary characters. They can be larger than life. It really doesn't matter. And they bring out very different aspects of the main characters. So I find them really useful. I really like my secondary characters to be well developed. So Meg definitely for light relief and just saying it how it is, in good ways, and pointing out when things were wrong in in the life in the village as well. Very much inspired by people I've known in the past who like that, very refreshing characters. And also Caris, she was one of the most entertaining things to actually write out, because I plan a lot, and I tend to go around in circles where develop the character a bit, the setting a bit, and that progresses the plot a bit further. Then it might be a stumble block, and I'll come back to the characters, and then they'll keep informing each other until I've got a bit of an outline. But Caris, before I started the first draft, was a fairly two-dimensional character. Just she was going to be a bit of a sort of malevolent presence as the housekeeper. But so she was the one who kind of came across as a bit more naughty and more interesting in the writing of the first draft. So that was a lot of fun to come up with. I mean, there's always something, no matter how you plan and plot to whatever detail, there's always something that comes out while you're at usually a lot of things, actually. And that's the delight of writing that first draft still, even if you're the biggest planner in the world. Is it all came out that I needed Lady Melling to go to the shops or go into the village so that she could see that Beth was back. And I thought, well, why on earth is she going to the village? She hates it there. She's not going to want to go. So I thought, well, okay, so she's run out of cigarettes. So why hasn't she sent the servant? And then I thought, because the servant hates her smoking and she's burned all her cigarettes. So then that character took on a completely different life. That she was, yes, this rather malevolent presence and rather sour-faced, but also had this love-hate kind of naughty side to her with Lady Melling. So that she really took off in the writing of the first draft. And the Lady Melling and her scenes are some of my favourites.
I love the scene with Caris when she takes a rifle to the people at the door.
Yeah, she's had enough. She's not mentioning words of these people.
One of my favorite parts of the book was the ending, the very last chapter. I think that was really pure genius. Did you have that planned out and written before you started the book, or at the very start, or did that happen to come by later on as you were doing multiple drafts?
It occurred to me once I had that scene with Caris burning and hiding Lady Melling's cigarettes. It suddenly came at that point. It all kind of, she suddenly fleshed out with the rest of the book. And I thought that would solve a little problem that I had and ended up nicely. So definitely before, at the beginning of the first draft, that ending occurred to me. And I was just rubbing my hands with glee on that one because I love it so much.
That is a lovely surprise. So when you start writing a book, like when you start writing the Telltale, do you discuss the idea with anyone first before you even put pen to paper?
I tend not to. I find it derail. Usually I won't talk about it even until I might give a very vague genre, but I will finish the first draft before telling anybody much about it. Because I find if I describe what kind of story I'm trying to write, I do it so badly, people just look at me and are kind of like, that sounds rubbish kind of way. So it just completely destroys my confidence and I don't want to write it anymore. So I have to get through the first draft because I'm terrible at explaining, in short, in a summary of what the story is about and what's going to be appealing about it. This time that Gabby Benson, G. Benson's done a couple of beta reads for me, and she was asking what I was writing, and I was thinking, oh goodness, if I describe it, it'll sound rubbish. And so I gave it for the first time. I thought, right, I'll just send her a chapter and she can just see what it is. And I say, like, here's the first chapter, and then it's a mystery from then on. And it really piqued her interest. So I kept sending her bits, which is the first time I've done this for a very long time. Because, like I say, it normally does completely derail my confidence. So, but luckily she found it quite intriguing and was incredibly encouraging. So she definitely got me through that first draft.
So how many drafts does a Telltale go through? And apart from Caris, did you have any other major changes?
Drafts-wise, it was about 6. So I do plan a lot, and I think that cuts down on the drafts I need. So it followed quite my normal progress, like first draft, then a major draft of shuffling things about, having to rewrite a chapter or putting a new one in. I think the others kind of, their characters deepened. There wasn't quite such a change. That tends to happen quite a lot, that I just grow to understand them and deepen their personalities or figure out how they work in some way and put some extra scene and depth in it to show it. So I think the rest, largely how I planned, but always hidden with hidden depths.
And the idea of the mystery notes, was that also part of the plan right from the start?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And I usually have that level of detail planned before I start.
So Telltale is your eighth book, right? Your eighth full length.
It's seventh.
It's the seventh full length. Okay. So what's changed in your writing? How have things changed in the way you write?
It's difficult to tell because I tend to alter the style a little for each book depending on what it is. So if you look at the first one of Penance, it will be very different to this one, just because I had different aims with the writing. I'm not sure if I can tell how it's changed because it does change between books so much.
Does it get faster? I guess the pandemic is not the ideal time to compare book writing times, right? So has that had a big impact on the time it took you to write the Telltale?
I think it was about average, actually, surprisingly. I think, it was about the same, strangely. Everything else seemed quite chaotic, and actually having my writing time quite in a regular slot. So I have to fit my writing around kind of kids and school and all sorts. So I have to write when I've got the time, so that usually keeps me on track. And it was something nice to return to, like it was like spending time in Wales, Strangely, even though the plot is pretty dire in places, it was still nice to go back to Wales in the book.
So do you tend to write most days, and how do you actually keep yourself in a writing zone?
I'm not somebody who writes every day, but because I'm a plotter, a lot of my, I suppose, writing time is just staring into the middle distance, kind of dreaming up stories. So I don't actually type out writing and practice every day. I suppose I am quite a distractible, shuffly kind of person who finds it difficult to sit down and concentrate. And I think that the planning helps me with that. That once I've got to the stage where I need to actually sit down and write, I'm dead keen on an idea. I've got it in my head and I really, really want to sit down and write it. So that enthusiasm for the story generally gets me through being a bit distractible.
And do you ever use beta readers? You said you had Gabby Benson looking at your book this time, but would you generally use beta readers to look through your books? And at what stage do they get to have a peek at the book?
Definitely. I absolutely need beta readers to point out lots of different issues. I think Gabby's done, I think, 2 or 3 for me now. She's she's annoying and amazing because she's hilariously kind of goes through writing little comments in the margins, what she finds funny or what's gruesome and grim. So she's always very good. She just kind of just says what she's thinking at the time. And sometimes she'll even go, if you dropped a little clue about something that suggests something interesting, she'll go, oh, what's this? Is this going to happen? And I'll think, no, it's not. I wish it was, because that would be even better. So she's got such good sense of what makes a story. She's an incredibly useful beta reader. I've got Cindy Rizzo, as by the time I've sorted it out a little bit, I like her to have a look at the second draft from an American perspective. And she comes out with all kinds of things that I use, idioms and phrases which I had no idea were British, but she's never heard of them, so it looks like utter nonsense. So that's another useful perspective. Diana Simmons, who's Australian, she's read all my books and always in no uncertain terms tell me what's wrong with them. So she will not hold back, and she is always right. Don't show her this, but she's always been very good at seeing what I'm trying to do with the book and running with it and telling me what I need to do to get where I wanted it to go in the first place. I said Wendy Hudson this time. That was really nice. She had a quick look at it. She tends to write more crime kind of complex novels, so it's very nice to have her perspective on it because of the genre. So she has a very good eye for detail as well. So yes, I use beta readers. They're incredibly useful, and I try to return the favour where I can.
So you said most of your books have an element of mystery or romance to them. Is there any other genre that you want to write but just haven't had the time to write?
Not yet. Strangely, I would never have picked historical to be anything I'd try, and I do happen to have just fallen into it. I suppose that's quite strange. I suppose my books are all domestic drama. I think that's probably what they are in essence, and that they, to sell that, you know, it's got to be, you've got to put it in either romance or you've got to put it mystery. So, but I mean, yeah, they're essentially domestic dramas, and you know, if somebody dies, it goes in mystery. If there's a happy ever after, into romance it goes.
I don't want to give the plot away too much, but did you ever consider there's a death in the book? Was that person always meant to die? Or did you think of having a happy ever after ending kind of thing?
No, there was always going to be death.
Okay.
And they were always always going to be the victim. Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing I definitely have plotted out before I start the first draft. That kind of change would derail me completely, and I'd have to replot. I admire people who make it up as they go along and have something coherent at the end. I just couldn't do that. I need a bit of I have to think ahead. I think I'm quite a slow writer, I think. So I definitely have to have a plan and it not go too badly wrong, or else it would take me forever to write. If I was just making up, it would take me years. It really would. So yeah, I'd have to think it through quickly in my head, have a plan, and then write it down.
I remember seeing a picture of your work desk with lots of post-it notes everywhere. Mm-hmm. Is that where the plot points are, or are they actually on your computer and you have them on post-its?
It's I have pages and pages of notes on the computer. While I'm plotting, little scenes will come to me and I'll write those down, little snippets of dialogue. So, you know, my outline is kind of like a very fragmented first draft, really. It's that kind of, you know, it's pages and pages and pages of notes. But those scenes will come to me, and even before I've got the outline, and I'll write those down. Actually, a lot of them I won't even use. Like I've got enough material to fill another book usually by the time I've finished. I will have that many notes. But at the same time, I will be thinking of the main dramatic points that I need to hit in the novel. So those will be on the Post-its. I'll be working them out using Post-it and shuffling them around. And also the different points of views. I find Post-its very useful for that, for whose point of view is going to tell which bit and what kind of balance does it have. You can see at a glance with the different colour Post-it notes. So I will use all sorts. This is definitely my kind of writing, is that I will go around all the houses until I've built up the picture in lots of different ways. So yeah, both.
And the last thing you do is name the folder with the name of the book. Is that what you do, to say that this is the end? I'm not touching this anymore.
That's right. Yes, I'm quite superstitious about it. There are two things I like to know. I really want to have the title before I finish the first draft. I really want to have a title in mind. I'm not happy if it doesn't come to mind, because that feels like I haven't really got a grip on the book. If I haven't got a title that kind of nails it for me, that puts me on edge. And then, but I don't want it to be the definite title until I've got it out in print, and then I can actually rename it. I don't know why. I don't know when I started this, but I do it every time now.
Talking about the book cover, your wife designs your book covers, right? Has she done all the book covers for you?
Yes, I think she has.
She's got a really good eye for detail, and this cover especially, I think it really stands out. So do you give her some feedback and tell her what you want on the cover? Is that something she does all on her own?
I mean, she also reads, I should have said, she's one of the most important beta readers as well, actually. You know, she's the one who I absolutely trust. Is this a good story or not? That kind of level of detail. So she knows what the story's about and what kind of impression it is. And she both her parents both have artistic kind of backgrounds. So she has that, even though she's actually a data scientist, she does have this artistic side to her as well. So she knows what the story's about. She had a much better idea of genres and what goes well on covers and what's the latest trends are than I do as well. So I absolutely let her just get on with that part. But I will give her a load of images that I really like, and some ideas of what I want to be on the cover, and then she'll go away and do that, and then she'll show me something, and I'll say, what about that bit? And she'll get annoyed at me because that bit doesn't matter, of course, and I don't understand that. And I just need to trust her.
I just love how she gets the contrast right, because she doesn't use multiple colors, but even with the few colors that she does use, she gets the contrast really spot on. And I think that makes the book really stand out when you're looking at it online.
Yeah, they look nice. They're simple enough so you can take them in, even when they're very small. And she chooses quite unusual colours that I think stand out without being shockingly bad, but stand out in a pleasing way. So she's She seems to have got better and better, all of the covers. This one is, definitely my favourite.
So, in writing the Telltale, what's been the most enjoyable part and what's been the hardest part?
I mean, I enjoyed writing this one enormously. It was a nice change from writing romance, actually. So it was so very refreshing to. I think I did 4 romance novels. So, and romance writing, I find it's quite a hard gig, actually. It's because you're writing a book which makes people feel like they're falling in love, and you've got to write characters who are appealing, and maybe they're a little bit flawed, but not too much. That's quite a very subjective thing to do, and it's very difficult to sometimes read reviews where people hate the characters or it doesn't work for them at all. And even if the characters aren't you at all, you can't really write 100,000 words without it being quite personal in some way. That you'll think this is an appealing trait for someone or a good scene. It's very personal, I think, romance writing, unless it's very removed from. If you're trying to do something that is copying another romance that's been done in just a slight different, if it's comes from real experience at all, it's quite difficult to take the criticism sometimes, I find. I mean, well, especially when the novel's quite fresh. I mean, I generally don't care at all what people say after a few months. It's kind of, it's gone. I can look at it much more objectively. But so it was quite nice to, especially with the last book, which had 2 characters who were quite vulnerable. It was nice to suddenly write some characters who didn't have to be likable at all, highly flawed, absolutely every single one of them. I mean, I got to like Beth enormously and Lady Melling. I think some people hate Lady Melling, and the nice thing about that is that Lady Melling couldn't give a crap if people liked her or not. So, I don't care either. This is the thing. Lady Melling is just Lady Melling, and it doesn't matter if you hate her or not. So it's that aspect of it was a very refreshing change. So I enjoyed writing it enormously.
The story of Lady Melling and Ellen and Beth would make a really nice young adult novel. Have you ever considered dipping into young adult market?
Sometimes it's that, I suppose, because I've got 2 kids who are 8 and 10. Actually, I read a lot. I read to them every night, and I'm more likely to go for a sort of children's novel, actually, sort of middle grade. 9 to 12 range. I love you have got so much freedom to do whatever you like with that age range. It's wonderful. So maybe I'll get into YA more. But if I did different genre, I think it would be kids, because that 9 to 12 range is incredible. There's so many good writers in that range.
Do you write little stories for your kids?
I write with it. Sometimes we write together, so I'll get around the computer and I'll type it up while they'll tell me things to write, and then we'll all chip in. And it's not too often these days, but we do still do it, and that's really fun. It's really, they're both very creative, imaginative little pair, and way more imaginative than me, and it's wonderful to see their input and how their brains work.
Most of your books have been standalone. Have you ever thought of writing a sequel or a prequel to any of the books?
It's not something that's really appealed. I suppose because I'm a plotter, I wanted to. I think very much in terms of that novel and it tying it up as best I can at the end of that. Especially with a romance, I don't want to break them up again or anything like that. Or with a mystery, I don't want anybody else to die after they've all been through that kind of harrowing story. But I'd like to do a series at some point. I don't know whether it be mystery or romance, but that definitely appeals. But going back to existing characters, I've mulled some things over, but I haven't felt it strongly enough yet.
Over all your books, has there been a secondary character that you've thought, oh, maybe I could write a book on this one?
I don't think there has, actually. People really love sequels and series. They really do. I've had lots of people comment, so can't you take this character or another character and keep progressing this story? And my brain just doesn't seem to work like that at the moment. I think, or maybe it will. So I suppose the one character that has passed through mine is like Pip, the younger sister of Poppy Jenkins, and going back to that area a few years later when Poppy's older and Pip's grown. That has a certain appeal, definitely, but it's never been enough to actually make me do anything yet.
In terms of like writing your books, you've just finished the Telltale. Are you already thinking about your next book? Or are you sort of just absorbing all the feedback from Telltale right now?
I tend to give myself a bit of a break, because when it's finished, it's still got to be formatted and just sort of distribute it and announce it, and there's usually a few interviews to do and things like that. So I'd give myself a bit of a break and do some publicity. At the same time, I'm always writing down ideas and snippets of dialogue, or at the same time. So I've got a folder of ideas and little bits of notes. But I won't seriously start mulling something. Last time I had 2 ideas that I started to progress at the same time, and just let myself see which one out in the end. And I probably do the same again this time. So possibly one a romance, one a mystery, and see which one gets furthest. So but yeah, no, definitely I have to finish off one book before I seriously do anything much work at all. I really admire lots of people who kind of have several books on the go in different stages. Like one's kind of in editing, and other ones they're doing a first draft. I can't cope with that many things going on.
So if you start off writing a mystery and a romance at the same time and see which one goes further, what happens if the one gets left behind? Would you come back to it?
I never have so far, which nags at me. There's all these kind of half thought through stories that just that I wish had been written up, but haven't been. But I haven't gone back to them yet. Maybe I will at some point.
How much of an impact do reviews have on your writing? Do you tend to read them? And what happens if you have negative reviews? How do you deal with them?
Yeah, no, I definitely look at them. I suppose because I'm in India, I don't have a publisher who can give me feedback or filter them through, I suppose. But I'd really like to see how a book's gone down, what people have liked about it. It's very useful feedback. Unfortunately, yeah, not everybody's going to like it. In general, because if a review is negative, it depends how it's negative. If it's personal, those are really hard to take, and you need to kind of walk away and not look for a while to get over those. But generally, they can be very useful, the negative ones as well, depending how polite they are. So, but once I start writing, if I'm into the first draft of another book, then I'll stop looking at reviews, or before then, because they can derail your confidence horribly. So yeah, I'll stop looking after a while, and so I can get on with writing without being distracted.
How do you write? Do you tend to do you need a specific place? Like, do you write in your office, or could you write anywhere? And do you listen to music or something when you're writing?
I don't listen to music, and I find a cozy place that I feel happy with, that might change for each book. And once I found that little writing nest, I want to finish the book there. So, it'll be different places around the house. It might be in the kitchen or in the lounge or in the attic, where I work mostly up in the attic, where, it's a little space kind of beyond where the kids can go sometimes. I mean, they still come and poke their nose up in the attic and distract me. But, so, yeah, I get into a habit for each book, it seems. But no, I can't write in cafes because I get too worried about the people going to read the screen. And I mutter to myself as well while I'm writing. So I could be, uttering all kinds of obscenities that are going on in the story. So I really don't want people listening.
And do you get time for reading in between writing?
Yeah, I read quite slowly, because between kind of writing and sorting out the kids who might be up at all hours, I read very slowly. But I do keep reading, because when I first had the kids, before having the kids, one of the best things I like, just take a Sunday and read a whole book from cover to cover. That was my favourite things. That just can't happen once you've got kids. It doesn't happen at all. So I didn't read for a couple of years very much at all, but I made myself, that was the way I liked to read. But so I had to change that, or else I wouldn't be reading ever. But now, yeah, I keep nibbling away at a romance and a mystery at the same time. So I've got Carrie Hunter's latest on the go at the moment, and actually also Val McDermott's 1979. So I have lots of mystery as well. Some more literary type books, I suppose. Of course, I forget about that. I'm reading to the kids all the time as well. So I actually get through quite a lot of stories these days. So now they're a bit older and can listen to more complicated stories. I read heaps of stories, a little bit at a time. Yeah. They like all kinds of fantasy genre, or actually there's a lot of murder mysteries now for 9 to 12 range. There's Robin Stevens' Murder Most, a Ladylike series. Yeah. It's just phenomenal. It's just, and that actually has a Sapphic character in it, one of the teenage detectives. in a very age appropriate way, is revealed that she likes women over the series, and it's wonderfully done. So reading that with kids was just amazing. It's really nice that you have way more gay characters and much more diversity in the kids' books these days than I ever had when I was growing up. So these are great books just to read as an adult.
That reminds me as well to ask, when you're plotting a book, are you thinking about the diversity of your characters? Obviously, depending on the setting.
Yeah, I think as guilty as a lot of writers are, that my earlier books were very, very white, and especially when they're set in London, it's really not representative at all. So, yes, I do have a bit of a check. Is this realistic for where it's set these days? Because I haven't in the past, so I'll give myself a bit of a kick up the backside on that one. And I think a lot of writers do these days, which is really good to see, because it's been hopelessly unrepresentative, and which, when you're writing in the queer space, you know what that's like, not to see yourself ever in books. So I'm glad that people are taking more note of that.
If you had to go back and get a chance to rewrite one of your books or change something in one of your books, is there anything you would change?
Nothing large, I don't think. Well, after Mrs. Hamilton, I wrote that and rewrote it, and then rewrote it again. That was quite a complex book to do as quite an early novel. So, I still have this kind of compulsion to rewrite it again to try make it as good as I can. But otherwise, there's nothing enormous anyway. Little details, definitely. You go back and you read it with a different perspective. So I think there's always little things that will make you cringe, or you think, no, I don't like that anymore. Or that gives me a not particularly good vibe, and a lot of the times my books do make me laugh, because sometimes the lines are, I found them funny and I'll put them in even if nobody else is going to find them funny. So it's quite nice that they do still make me laugh when I read them. I tend actually not to read them unless there's something like a book club coming up and I want to refresh my memory before answering questions on it. So it's because that reason that you go back and something makes you cringe and you wish you could change it, but it's out there now. Yeah. But I read out Poppy Jenkins at the beginning of the pandemic. I had the idea from somebody, I can't remember who it was now, but when the pandemic started and everybody was trapped at home, an author I knew started reading from her book, which I thought was such a lovely thing to do. And I thought, well, which is my happiest book? I'll read that out, a chapter a day. And actually that was really fun to do. And that was best of all because I was reading it to entertain people. I wasn't concentrating on bits I'd change. I was reading it to be entertaining. And actually it was really fun to go back and revisit Poppy and Rosalind, because I really do like those characters, and it being set back home. It was another nice walk down memory lane.
I think it's also nice to hear the author reading, because then you sort of hear it as they meant it. You hear the dialogue as they meant it to be said. I think that's really nice as well.
The trouble with that is that people hear your voice always, I think, in books after that. So you have to be a bit careful. Like Carrie, I hear her voice all the time when I'm reading her books. It comes across so strongly in different characters. And I do that with hear the other authors as well, but particularly Carrie, when she has a sort of northern dialect going as well.
After Jessica Lambert is also out in audiobook, right? That's the one of your books that's out in audiobook.
Yes, it is.
Is it likely that the Telltale might be out in an audiobook?
I would love it to be. I'll have to see about that one. Yeah, there's nothing in the pipeline at the moment, but yes, I'd really like that to be out in audiobook as well now. Actually, Tantor Audio picked up for Finding Jessica Lambert and offered a contract on it, and so I went with that because they had not very good narrators. So I was very pleased that one was picked up. I'm not sure if I'll go back to some of the older ones, but from now on, I do hope that the new ones will go into audio.
Can you tell the readers a little bit about something you enjoy doing outside of writing?
My life is dominated by the kids, which is lovely because they're heaps of fun. Tiring, my God, they're tiring. But I love having the kids and going and doing stuff with them, whether it's cuddling up and having a read or going on adventures outside. I'm very outdoors kind of person, I suppose. Growing up in mid Wales, I'm very much country girl, and living in the city now, I'm itching to get out into countryside a lot. So I love getting outdoors in the hills, and taking photos, playing with the kids. That's pretty much my life, really. Yeah, cooking, playing outside with the kids, and writing. That there's not much time for much else after that.
Do you have any advice for someone who's just starting out in publishing novels?
yeah, keep writing, and don't hesitate to self-publish if you really want to, especially in something like a niche genre, or where it might be, you're writing queer books, because mainstream publishing is publishing more queer books, which is really good to see. But it's not publishing a lot still. So don't hesitate to self-publish, and because you'll get an audience and you'll get feedback and encouragement, and that's wonderful.
So this is the this and that section. So I'm just going to give you 2 words and just pick whichever word comes to mind without any explanation. Baking or reading?
Baking or reading? Reading while eating something I baked.
That's good enough. Outdoors or indoors?
Oh, outdoors. No, I can. Yeah, I'm decisive on that one.
Spring or autumn?
Autumn, just.
Zombies or vampires?
Zombies or vampires? Neither of those. No, thank you.
Writing on a laptop or writing on Post-its?
It's got to be both. It's got to be both. I told you I was going to be bad at this.
Ice cream or custard?
Ice cream is frozen custard, so I'm having both.
Dancing in the rain or hot chocolate by the fire?
Well, see, hot chocolate by the fire after dancing in the rain would be perfection.
Strawberries or blackberries?
Oh, strawberries. No, I can do that one.
Walking in the countryside or walking up a mountain?
Yeah, mountain in the countryside. I'm okay. The mountain is class as countryside. That's all right, I think.
Pancakes or scones?
Oh, see, this is the thing. It's scone by a whisker. As long as it's really freshly made, it's got clotted cream and fresh sliced strawberries as well. But it has to be that to edge it.
Vanilla or chocolate?
Scoop of both, yeah.
Theatre or cinema?
Oh, these are way too hard. How do people do this? Because this is no, I can't be quick on this either. Normally cinema, I'm like, my goodness, if there's a good theatre, you can't beat that.
And I have one just for you, Claire. Christmas or Christmas?
Yay!
Are your lights up as yet?
No, actually, no, I'm not allowed to put them up until after bonfire night. Then they're up.
Okay.
And then the tree is up as soon as trees are available. Yeah. First day they're on sale, we're out there.
Thank you very much for your time today. It was really nice to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me.
Do you have any parting thoughts for your readers?
Thank you always for reading my books. I don't make it easy sometimes because I write quite different things each time, so they take a bit of a risk on opening up the new one. So thank you for those who do.